Hi, everybody. I am talking to you from my home in LA where I do most of my work, finishing for broadcast, which is what I do. I do online work and doing color as a part of the finishing work. We are going to be working with footage from one of the latest shows that I've worked on called Bullseye. It's on Fox. You can watch full episodes, and I highly recommend it. Another show that I'm working on right now is Running Wild with Bear Grylls. I can't say anything about the show besides that it's absolutely awesome. I also do color correction for Food Fighters for NBC. Every year, twice a year, work on Dancing with the Stars, which is coming up, I believe. There we go, September 14th. And if you want to know more about the work that I do on it, there is some stuff on the Boris website where they kind of did a project story. Anybody wants to know a little more about me, IMDb, and a few more of the shows that I worked on. And enough about that. So let's dive right in. This is a sequence of aerial shots from Bullseye. They usually would do a few of these shots as transition between the different locations. As I watch the show after color, I, in a lot of cases, notice things, especially in aerial shots, things like this. I'm going to slide it over. So there's a lot of grain, a lot of noise on the shot. Usually the camera is moving very fast, or they cranked it up a little, or something. But it's there. Quick fix for that. Let's go to effects. My go-to tool set for fixing a lot of things is going to be in image and restoration, BCC image and restoration. I'm using BCC 9 and I'm using Avid 8.4. Noise reduction, that is a problem here, and I'm just going to throw it on, and immediately, I know we're all on computer screens, but immediately you can see how there's a lot less noise. I'm going to zoom in, and we can see the difference. That is such an easy way of playing with this. Let's go to the effect panel. Okay, so on the UI, you have spatial smoothing and color range. Play with both and see what works for your shot. See, that added a little more noise. They also have, if we go for this one, you can see a lot of the noise right here. Let's bump to our effect palette and noise reduction, and magic happens. A great thing that exists in a lot of the BCC plugins is the presets. I usually start with default and then play around with presets before diving into the actual parameters that you can change. Increased smoothing works really well, I found. You can play around with smoothing, temperature, color range, spatial smoothing, and all of these different items, and you can turn sharpening off or on with other parameters. And then let me play this thing now that it has. This one, the render takes about 50 seconds for this little section, so I will spare you that. I know that we're looking at probably 5 frames a second, hopefully more, but the change is substantial. Definitely a major drop in the noise in the picture. So that is one example of very, very quick and easy fix that I use all the time. Let's take a look on the next item. Okay. A very common problems in the type of shows that I work on, which are reality and reality competition, is there are multiple cameras, probably could be anything from 5 to 17 to 20. But then on top of all of those, they really love to add those GoPros, and they cut them into the sequence without any regard if it's meshes in or not. And a big problem is that when I watch the show, my feeling is, oh, we're going from that great looking camera to this teeny camera image, which a lot of times is less resolution. But the big thing about it is that fisheye effect that we get all the time with these GoPros. Here is my solution for that. Image restoration, lens correction. So we throw that on. Oh, we are pretty much almost there. Let's jump in. My go-to preset for all of these is GoPro Medium. And that pretty much gets me really close to where I want to be. Correction level. Let's lower it a little. Nope, other direction. And let's get that. Here we go. Now, so that is the outer ring, or right here if you don't like the rings. Second item is scale. So I'm going to shrink this down. This is what the fix is doing. Now, a big thing with this is, as you zoom yourself in after the correction, is you want to make sure that you are not ending with any of this. This will get you an immediate QC rejection. So we never ever want to get that, although it does happen. So there we go. We have a straight through skyline, or horizon, I should say. And when we play through the sequence, let's go again. Oh, it's right there. And you know what? As I go through, oh, we have another one of these shots. So a quick and easy one is drag and drop. And this pretty much takes care of it. Maybe a little different correction here. And we are good. So this is a real easy fix for GoPro footage. There's this one as well. This might need a little more correction. So again, BCC image restoration, lens correction, and we're right here. We want to make sure this zoomed us out a lot. So let's make sure that we get as much of the image as possible without getting those black edges. A few other parameters that you can easily change in this, which makes this a very, very powerful tool, are you have the things we looked at, the scale master and correction, but you can scale just part of it to adjust and get rid of that black edge we do not want. A couple of really cool things. I have yet to actually use them, but they are there, which is a great tool if you need to use it. Vertical perspective and horizontal perspective, so you can really tweak where that lens correction falls, as well as you can pan through the picture and you can decide where the center of the correction happening from. I use it as correction, but as I look through it, it could have some really useful creative usage should you want to go that route. So here's another quick sequence. We have our contestant up here for those watching at home, and she is going to be let go, and then she's supposed to throw this little bag into the bullseye. As I look through the sequence, there's a few things that really bothered me. The first one is this shot. I get that really, really curvy horizon. So I will start with lens correction, throw it on. I will start with my go-to medium, get me pretty much there. And let's zoom her back a tad. Nope, she probably was right at the right place. So that's her. Horizon is corrected. But then there's something still wrong with the shot. So a lot of the BCC effects have this thing hiding in the bottom. It's called geometrics. And what we probably need to have is rotate 180 degrees. And now she's in the correct direction. This is something that happens a lot with GoPro cameras, and for you guys to be aware, a lot of times they mount them upside down just for ease of mounting. So the tool for it exists right there as a part of the BCC plugin. So there's no need to embed effect inside effect or layer them on top of each other or anything like that. And this will save us time in render. As you can see here, it's, well, at least I can see on my computer, it is truly real time. So that's one. And I think there was another GoPro. Here it is. If you find a preset that totally works for you, go back to the preset little pull down menu and save it. And we'll call this one Tal GoPro Fix. And when I go to the other GoPro effect, I can easily effect palette. We want our lens correction. We're going to go into it, effect editor, and load it. And I believe that it's right here. Once I reboot the software, it will actually appear in my pull down menu. Another way for us to see all these presets is the effects browser. I believe this was introduced in BCC 9, and it is opening up. Here it is. So this will allow us to watch the clip or a short part of the clip, which is looping, and then quickly go through the existing presets until, of course, I found the perfect one, which is my GoPro Fix. And it's there. Super easy. Here's another thing that as I was watching the sequence, I noticed. This shot of our host, Godfrey, one of the two, is really shaky. Let's try and see if we can stabilize this shot. Image restoration, optical stabilizer, analyze. Super quick. As you can see, the shot itself is about a second. And let's take a look. And just like that, boom. I'm going to leave it on a loop and I'm going to talk about this a little. A lot of what we do in online sessions and finishing work is we do the screenings with the clients. We do the screenings with the executive producers, with the directors, sometimes DPs. For them, they have worked on the show for a very long time. This is the final pass, and everything needs to look perfect. Sometimes you go through the screening and you get to a shot like this one, and they are upset that it's shaky. A great solution like this optical stabilizer that you can throw on and easily show them how quickly stuff could be done, a lot of times makes you the savior, at least in their mind. And that's a great position to be in and kind of keep them coming back because you show the magic. Let's take a look at the next quick sequence. Here is another shot where the sequence was shot. This is Kellen Lutz, the host of the show. As I look through the sequence, I have another shaky shot right there. So, as we have just seen, optical stabilizer and quick analyze. And I'm just going to be trusty. And it's there. Now, optical stabilizer gives you a few options if the shake is really, really big. As the shake is corrected, it automatically, in the post-processing, auto-scales it. This image was shaking just a little bit, so it already did the scaling and we can barely see a difference. But we can also choose not to do it that way, not to have an auto-scale, and then we will see the edges as they float around. I pretty much always use the auto scale, but another thing I would like to point out, this stabilizer is not just for what's known as translation, up, down, left, right. It will also allow us to do rotation and zoom. So it is really good on basically handheld cameras, fixing those and not just correcting for wind adjustment and stuff like that. We can actually give it a quick try. I think this shot was a wee bit shaky as well. And let's see how it works here. Optical stabilizer. Okay. And And it didn't clean everything, but it definitely smoothed out a lot of that shakiness. Here's a quick sequence, and as I'm watching the show, hopefully it's easy enough to see on this, let me do this. Okay. We call this Focus Optional Friday. It is just not as focused as it should be. Go-to tool for that, BCC Image Restoration and Magic Sharp. Immediately you can see how it already taking effect. This would need some render to actually play, but I want to talk about the different variations that you can do here. In the presets, there are 8 presets, 10 presets. Actually, there's 9. This one is mine. And you can bounce through. This will also show you the ones that I've looked at before. So let's pick this one is pretty good. Nah, suppress noise. This one's pretty good. I want to go through some of the parameters on this. You can choose the sharpening amount. What will happen is that you will get more noise out of it. So it is a balancing act of getting it sharper without adding too much noise. If I'll sharpen it a lot, this will decide where the sharpening will start, the radius of the sharpening, so it kind of pulls over the edges and make them harder. The important tool of noise suppression. Now you suppress noise, you become defocused again. So, or at least give it that feel of it. So if we go back to our default, which got us really close, and then a little bit of sharpen amount. This looks pretty good to me. Again, it's very, very difficult to really save shots that are out of focus. A lot of times a quick fix will be more than your client dreamed about. So you are, again, in most cases, become the savior. The key with this is obviously have mistake-free shoot and mistake-free post-production process. But what I do and what a lot of us finishing online editors and colorists do is hide those mistakes that happen. So this is a great, great tool, the Magic Sharp. What I wanted to point out is, as I was watching this, I was noticing that on this shot, I have what's known as some dead pixels. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. Dead pixels are dead pixels in the camera sensor. Sometimes the dead pixels in the camera sensor rear their ugly head. A lot of times they will be on that camera for the entire shoot day. Hopefully somebody caught it and fixed it overnight, but a lot of times, sadly, they don't. So you might find, especially in a remote shoot, that it is there almost throughout the shoot or definitely throughout the episode for that camera. A lot of times they stay in the exact same place, which is what you're hoping for. So here is another great fix for those things. Pixel Fixer. We throw it on, nothing happens, but then there is this little X right here on the corner. I'm going to switch to Effects Editor, and I am just going to throw it on. We can't see it. Let me turn off. Sorry, bear with me here. We can still see a little bit of it. Let me zoom in so we can see it in action. What it basically does is copy the pixels around it to eliminate the problem. And it's gone. A normal fix for something like this, without this Pixel Fixer tool, would be to use Avid Paint Effect. What I find is that Paint Effect is pretty much impossible with this because it is very, very difficult to make such a small shape, make sure that it is feathered, and move it around easily. Pixel Fixer makes that basically super easy with this kind of X marks the spot. But I have more than one, so Pixel Fixer gives me 10 of these. Let's throw on, because we know we have 4 of these. And I'm going to drag it close, but not cover it. Here we go. Second one. And Here we go. All right, I'm going to zoom in. It's gone. Slide over. And having those plus locators makes it super easy to see where you are. And I'm done. A very quick render. And basically I can drag this into my bin and name it as camera 3, highlight camera 3 in the sequence by changing it color. It's color of all the clips from camera 3, and then throw them on the picture. Make life real easy to basically fix 100, 200 shots in no time. Another really easy and good habit to do is save this preset. Call it camera 3 pixel fix, and you have it for the duration of the season. Hopefully they fixed it for the next day or episode, but we can never know. So there we go. Those were our pixel fixers. I'm just going to bounce between them for a second, just like that. And it even fixes very nicely on the moving part of the image. Because remember, there was one right there, right on his chest that became his ear. Bullseye FX really does amazing work here, handling that in the minimal amount of distortion or noise. It's a very clean fix, which I love, and it's an indispensable tool. Here is another example. So another thing that happens a lot within online and coloring, especially on these kind of shows, which are they set up the scene and they roll. An interview happens, a chit chat with the contestants, the action takes place, and along the way, a cameraman decides to change the iris, or they left the camera in auto iris. This shot is the prime example, or cloud came through. Either way, we get sharp or semi-sharp drop in brightness on these shots. And this happens anything from 10 to 50 times through a show. Here is a quick fix. We go to Flicker Fixer, BCC Image Restoration, Flicker Fixer, and I go to Frame Analysis, and I raise the time window to 20. What this basically does is the analysis of the frame, how the algorithm analyzes and balances the frame, is it looks at 20 frames before and after, I believe. What this does for us is utilizing this AVX plugin to level off or level a longer shot, because I believe that originally was built for flickering lights in during the shoot, or camera shutter going too fast or too slow. So let's take a look at it now. It is a lot less jarring. So when things are less jarring, when things are eliminated and cleaned out, what we end up with is the show. People watch the show, they stay with the story, and they don't pay attention to any of these technical parts of the show, which are important, but they will take away from the story. And when people leave the story, then we end up with probably less ratings, and we don't like that. A lot of what I covered here is, as you've noticed, is to make those things as invisible as possible. It's all a part of the invisible art of things. Now, as you go through the screening and the client is watching the show and they love what you see, do feel free to point out what you have done. Otherwise, they will truly think that they shot perfect show with no dead pixels and no stabilizing issues. Their GoPro is their best looking camera and the lines of it are always straight, and so on and so forth. So feel free. It's what I do. So I would recommend show off from time to time as you go through to your client what you have done. I'm about to switch to something else. I don't know if Jesse or Peter, if there's any questions before I move to
Peter, is there anything you want to go over now?
Well, sure. We can address a couple of these questions if you like quickly before we move on to the next section. There were a couple of what should be easy ones. One, Tal, what are your system specs?
Oh, that's a good question. I use Mac Pro DevStar, loaded up nicely. I have the 8 core and I have 32 gigs SSD startup disk, although all of my hard drive and all the media is being played from Thunderbolt 2 drive.
Nice, nice. Here's another question. What resolution are you currently working in?
The show is on Fox. If we're working at 720p and I'm working at 8-bit right now just for the sake of the webinar, usually I'm at 10-bit.
Yeah, I thought it was HD. I answered that, but 720p. Okay, cool. Yeah, there were a few others in here. Some people had questions about using different hosts such as Scratch and Vegas, Evolve, but
I can answer some of that. I work on Avid and I color in Resolve. Resolve is my go-to tool for color. I pretty much do all of my coloring in that. I use Boris effects in Resolve, and I'll tell you which ones I'm using in Resolve. I use the lens correction in Resolve all the time for all those GoPros. So I basically bake in the lens correction GoPro adjustment as a part of the node tree in Resolve. And I also use the noise reduction. What I find is that the BCC ones have those presets in place, and a lot of times it's a quicker and easier thing to do. Another point regarding noise reduction on Resolve is a free software. There's a free version, there's a paid version that costs $1,000. The paid version, the biggest difference between the paid version and the free version of Resolve is noise reduction. If you do have the BCC package installed, which you guys can jump in and tell me, I can't remember what the cost for it for OFX, but it could be you get a lot out of the BCC package in Resolve. So it might be a way to go to get that noise reduction in there just as a cost effectiveness factor. So you have those great presets already built in, and you can have all those other effects as a part of Resolve as well.
well, thanks, Tal. I'm going to hand it all back to you now and mute myself again and let you continue on with the rest of this wonderful seminar.
Thank you. So one of the things that I do a lot is we find that we need to blur things in the frame, and I need to clean things that shouldn't be there. A couple of years ago, for the first time, I saw a great demo of Mocha by Imagineer System, now a part of Boris FX. The demo was showing a piece of footage from a feature film. Mary Poplin, who was the demo artist, did an amazing job of removing a man from the shot, but it seemed to me at the time as something very complex, something that will just not really be applicable to what I do. Is, I got to go through 1,200 shots. I have 2 days, maybe 3 days, if I'm lucky, 4 days to go through a show. It's just not going to happen to go into something as what I saw at the time as very complex piece of software. Flash forward to about 6 months ago, and I saw it again. And it really, especially when they were talking about the merging with Boris FX, really piqued my interest, and I started playing with it. I watched quite a few of the videos on the website. Also saw another demo with Mary Poplin. Thank you, Mary. And then I started realizing what I can use it for. So I want to show you a couple of really cool examples. Here is a shot. We have 5 people in the shot. They are freezing cold, so they are moving a lot. And let's assume, for the sake of demo, that the client says to us, I want to blur all 4 faces. Now, this would be in regular situation, a fairly simple thing to do, but kind of painful. In most cases, what I would do, I would go to Avid Image, I will put a paint effect, I will draw 4 circles on their faces, and then I will track all 4 of them, change them to blur, and so on. Let me show you something else. I'm going to just go through the entire round trip. I'm going to export this piece of video. We are going to put it on Boris FX Webinar and in Boris FX Webinar Mocha. Blur 4 faces. Now, I have a preset for it, and I will open that preset right now. What I'm basically doing is I'm sending it out as a QuickTime animation movie, millions of colors, best. No need for sound. And we're going to do OK. We're going to do save. And we're just going to call it. We're going to put it right there. It's a usually you're correcting one shot at a time. It's a very quick export. One more thing I would say about exporting is a lot of times, I'm doing this for the demo, so I called it Blur for Faces. But a lot of times what I use for the name of the clip, I go to the first frame of it and I name it the timecode of it, the master timecode. So when I come back, I know where to put it in my big sequence. Let's jump into Mocha. I use Mocha Pro because Mocha Pro, there's, I believe, a few levels of Mocha. Mocha Pro has this really great tool called Remove, which we will play with in a second. Choose. I open up the clip. Here we go. Blur for faces. Open. So here's the clip. This is the Mocha interface. As I said, there are a lot of really great videos that cover all of these things, what every single one of these is, and how to do these. Play along with me. I'm going to zoom in, holding the Z button and holding the X button. I'm going to turn this off. And this is your spline tool. So I'm going to mark their faces and right click to stop the marking. I'm going to select all of the points. I'm going to round it up and I'm going to give it a slight edge. I'm going to do that again for this gentleman right here. Right click, select all of these, round the shape, and a quick. And do it for round the shape, and a quick order, and here's this one. Now, I'm only doing it on one frame. And let's move this one over here. Okay, so now I have my four shapes. And this little thing marks that there's a key frame right there. And the next thing I will do, I'm going to track. It's a very quick tool. You also might have noticed that I did not turn off my Avid. What I did is just hide it. So Avid is open in the background while this is tracking. And we're going to just look at those tracks one time. Great. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all four of these, and I want to see the mat. And I want to see just the mat. So here are the four people. I'm done. Let's export render shapes. I'm going to do all visible, bicolor matte, save it as a QuickTime, choose where it goes. I'm going to name it the exact same name. So if you had a timecode before, click on it. It will put it right here. And I'm going to call it matte. Save and OK. Here's the thing to turn off is keyframe every. Turn that off and OK. It's a very fast render, as you can see. And I am just going to, before jumping back into Avid, I want to do one thing, and it is to make sure that I've actually rendered it correctly and I see all four faces. This is, again, this is rendering at animation, full resolution, 5994. Let's close this, close my QuickTime, and I'll move this out of the way. And let's go back to our Avid. I will do, here is my bin, and here is my mat, and I'm just going to drag it in. It will import it based on your previous import settings, and I'm going to edit it into my sequence. I added two layers, Command Y, and here is that one. I'm going to leave an empty layer in between. Okay, Here is our matte that we just created. We need to blur, right? The client wanted it blurred. Let's go to blur and sharpen, and let's pick Gaussian blur. Okay, I'm gonna jump back into my, and here we go, single monitor. Here's our blur. Here's our matte. So normally what I would do is use Avid, basically matte key. Super simple. I throw it on, it's there. What I found is that I prefer to use, especially for these ones, I prefer to use Boris composite. And I'll explain in a second. So in Boris composite, because we're standing on the title, basically on the key layer, we are going to apply a title matte, and we are going to do normal, and we are going to use filter layer. So, and of course, we're going to invert it. And we are done. Now, the client says, you know, this is really great, but we need to blur their faces more. If we were in the Avid paint tool, I would have to select every one of these faces, go in, change the level of the blur on them, make sure that I don't have any keyframes along the way where my tracking has failed me and I manually corrected. And those of you who have blur know exactly what I'm talking about. Instead, all I need to do is go into the Gaussian blur filter and just raise it a little bit, or a little less, or do whatever I want in the middle. Or replace this blur altogether with something else. Another handy side effect of using the Boris composite is that it has all of these extra tools. So there's Pixel Chooser, which we will not get into, but it is an extremely powerful tool for creating masks. So you can minimize the effect after the effect. There's, of course, the many modes of compositing this in. The tools are at our fingertips, and they're already in place. They're already a part of the effect. So I go for the path of least resistance. I start with something, but then as I go and repeatedly do something, as I learn the process, as I learn what I do, as I learn what the effect can do, the plugin can do, I can improve on it. So if the key is good, but we want to adjust it a little bit, we can easily because you actually have key adjustment. So you want to tweak those edges a little bit, the power is there for you. That is a very easy way of doing this. Let's go to another example. This is a prime example of a screening experience. So I'm screening the show with the clients, and they say, oh, the show looks amazing, but you know what? Production really, man, they painted this bullseye. It's like, is there anything we can do about these? So my usual response is, let me see what I can do. That way, you're not committed for a fix that might look bad. So I said to this client, let me give it a try. And here is what I did here. Let's export this quickly to our mocha folder. And here we go. And the next thing, we're going to open our Mocha Pro. And we're going to start a new, I'm going to select a new piece of video, Bullseye for Paint, 111 frames. And I'm going to mark something that is very defined within, but you don't have to be dead accurate on this, by the way. I'm at the beginning here. I'm going to lose this extra keyframe I created, and I'm going to track. Now, normally I would attempt it with Avid Paint Effect. I would try and steal this piece of color to this piece of color to cover that, but it could take hours. And I have a very good rule personally, and it is the 15-minute rule. Basically, if you can't do it in 15 minutes, do it later or send it out. So here's the track. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enlarge this to actually be the gray, because the gray seems to be okay on those paint marks. I'm just going to make my shape a little smaller here. And I was working on the wrong keyframe. Okay, here we go. So this looks pretty good to me at this point. We should probably move this one a little in and these two a little in. Okay, next step. So we tracked one layer and it has one keyframe. I'm going to duplicate this layer, Apple D, select layer 1, and I'm going to jump to remove. I'm on the first frame of the sequence, and I'm going to say create. What that just do is it created a still frame right here inside results folder in the mocha folder where we were working. We kept our stuff, and then result and clean up Bullseye for paint. It's a TIFF file, and when I double click it, it opens me directly into Photoshop. That's just my setting. I'm going to clean this one frame in Photoshop. I select it. Shift F5 would be, you can do content aware or pattern, which I prepared in advance. I use 90%, so some of that natural texture of the shot or the frame comes through. Let's do this one. Here's the red one. And here is the blue one. So I had about 80 of these shots. So that's where I have my pattern prep. We have a much cleaner image. I'm going to save it. I'm going to close it so I know it is saved. And I'm going to hide that. It actually changed the one frame that Mocha created. I'm back to Mocha. I'm in remove. I duplicated the layer, which is my way of handling these things. Another thing you want to use is use clean plate exclusively. I'm going to turn the wireframe off so you can see what I call the magic. And it's doing it on the shot. The camera is moving and it's there. And as you can see how quickly this render is. I highly recommend, again, going into Mocha Imagineer System Boris FX website and looking at these videos, because there's so many tools in here to make this a perfect track and a perfect cleanup. I go through 1,200 shots. So I need these things done, and I need them done quickly without really giving up on quality. We are going to export rendered clip. I use QuickTime Movies, and we're going to call it Bullseye for Paint, and it's going to be fixed. Okay, and let's hide Mocha. Let's jump back into Avid. We are going to bring our bin into the frame for you guys to see. Paint fix, drag it in, or press import. And we're done here. I'm going to jump to the big screen and paint it. I want to show, I'm not actually going to jump into Mocha, but I want to show you another prime example of fixing on Mocha, which I did. I redid this last night, and it took me about 15 minutes to do. This is a giant crane shot showing the track, and as we go to the end of it, here is production. Thank you very much. Now, some shows don't mind that at all. For some reason, and I thank them for it, the shows that I work on hate this. They hate to see that there is production in the frame. For them, it takes them out of the story of the show. So if you do this in Avid, this would be absolutely impossible because the crane move is just not trackable in basically point tracking, which is what Avid does. Here is what I did. I did exactly what we saw in the last example. I went in, I tracked it, and I painted that one last frame. And it's gone. When you show this to your clients, you are their savior. And I remind you, it is a fully organic crane move. But here's the risk with those kind of things. You show this to your clients, they say, this is great. But what about that guy? What are we going to do about this guy? So you have to go back, load the same shot again, and paint out the Jeep. And that is my demo of BCC plugins and my favorite new toy, which is Mocha. In preparing for this demo, I was officially told that soon Mocha is going to be a plugin into Avid. I throw it on, I double click on it, and I'm in the Mocha interface to fix things, track them. Also, Mocha, I believe, will be a part of the BCC. The Mocha tracker will become a part of the BCC. But Peter, if you want to jump in on that. But that's all I got, guys. And if you guys want to see any more of this Mocha stuff, let them know, and we can do something about that.
Hi, folks. Yeah, so just to wrap this up, I mean, there were a couple of questions about round tripping and exporting QuickTimes out to work with Mocha. And as Tal briefly mentioned there, we're currently working on a way to eliminate this, what could be considered a slightly more difficult workflow. I mean, we're going to have BCC a Mocha plugin. It'll just be a direct plugin. Just drop it on the timeline, click, and it'll launch Mocha right up inside of the Avid, which is going to be remarkable. Truly a huge time saver. And in addition to that, you're going to find in BCC 10, which we were demonstrating at NAB this past year, you're going to find that Mocha will be integrated into every single filter in BCC. And I also noticed that there was a question about when BCC 10 is going to come out and who's going to get it. Well, when we announced BCC 10, which was NAB this past year, we essentially said to everybody who visited our booth, okay, well, if you purchase 9 now or moving forward until the time of release, you will get BCC 10, the upgrade, for free. So considering that Mocha is going to be integrated into that, that is just a tremendously powerful upgrade for free to new BCC 9 users. So just something to keep in mind there. But there were a lot of great questions in there. All of them I answered. They're all like showing up publicly. But if anybody has further questions, please feel free to contact me, Peter M. at forceofx.com. I'd happily engage anybody with any question they may have regarding the BCC stuff or what I know of the Mocha stuff. And what I don't know of the Mocha stuff, I can just pass you on to Mary or Ross at Imagineer, who are truly highest level of experts on that software. Tal, I want to thank you so much for the webinar. That was wonderful, tremendously helpful. I mean, I'm just seeing comments on excellent webinar, very informative. People just really enjoyed you sharing your secrets with us. Thank you so much for doing that.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you.